John Lovell of Warrior Poet Society is wrong about bug out bags. He published a video roughly 3 years ago that's garnered 1.6 million views, and it's called 3 Reasons Why I Ditched My Bug Out Bag. And I'm afraid that many people might be following his advice on this subject. I'm going to break down his video point by point and point out where I think his logic is flawed. In his video, he explains that he once had a bug out bag for himself, but none for his family members, and talks about how he's a rescuer, a defender, and that he would die to save the people that he loves. Admirable, for sure. We all have loved ones that we would be willing to die for, but he uses that as a criticism for people, preppers, who he assumes are going to take their bug out bag and just abandon their loved ones to fend for themselves, to head into the deep woods, as he puts it, and eat berries and rabbits and stuff. With more power to ya, I'm just not built that way. This is an example of the stereotypes and flawed assumptions that run throughout his video. To his defense, he clearly states that his background is in security, and that's how he views things. But that's a flawed perspective and judgment to use on the topic of bug out bags and bugging out. To be clear, this video is not a diss on John Lovell or Warrior Poet Society. That will be lost on some of you who will rush to flame me in the comments, but so be it, that's good for the algorithm. My video is in a way like his video, a community service discussion. In fact, see how he describes his own video in his video.
I'm really more of just asking a question so that we can be more prepared together. So this is a community service. It's not me, the big man. I'm ready and let me pull up a seat so I can teach you a lesson. It's not like that at all. It's like, hey, let's have a nice chat. And I've got some areas of weakness that I need to grow into. And
John Lovell is a fine fellow, I'm sure. I've never met him, but he seems like a decent guy. And he's knowledgeable, particularly on his warrior subject, as the channel of his name denotes. But John uses that warrior perspective and experience as his basis for the argument on why his opinion on bugging out and bug out bags is particularly important.
From a security aspect is how I'll approach these type videos. So I wanted to do some of that work of context so you knew where I was coming from, and we can approach the question of bugging out and preparation, apocalyptic preparation specifically, with a little bit more of a sober mind.
Now let me set the context for my response. A warrior is not necessarily the same as a prepper, the same as a prepper is not necessarily the same as a warrior. Can there be overlap between the two? Yes, of course, and in fact, I would argue that there should be overlap. But the distinction here is important. I am less of a warrior than I am a prepper. I've owned guns all of my life, I've been hunting for years, I have membership to the local shooting range, and I have plenty of pew-pew power. But I'm not a marksman or an expert in military strategy. Bushcraft interests me more than ballistics, food storage interests me more than firearms. To each their own, but whereas John is a warrior first and a prepper second, I'm a prepper first and a warrior second, and it's my belief that the sphere of bugging out and bug out bags falls to the prepper niche. His security background prompts him to see prepping from a warrior's lens, and while that can be helpful, it can also be limiting. So let's analyze John's video from a prepper's perspective.
The very first reason is because I'm really hard-pressed to find any context where bugging out is the right solution. There are contexts where you would absolutely want to bug out. So for instance, if there was a natural disaster like a hurricane careening toward your house, that's a good time to bug out. You got to bug out. So that's a good reason. If Negan and his militia of outlaws has moved into your neighborhood and it is doomsday, apocalypse, whatever, now's a good time to bug out. They're going to take over your place and kill you, presumably. So let's make sure we bug out in a few key instances. If you live in downtown New York City in a high-rise apartment building, man, that is a bad place to be in. You should think about bugging out because any place would be better than that.
The exceptions he's outlined here are important, and they're the very reasons why every prepper should have a bug out bag. John's arguing that they don't apply to him, that he's going to stay. And I don't know where John lives, but nowhere, and I repeat, nowhere, is entirely safe from situations like natural disasters, which would require a bug out. Those natural disasters are infinitely more frequent than the end-of-the-world scenarios that John is building his argument around for ditching the bug-out bag.
Folks, I've noticed in the preparation world, especially when they just started with the idea of, oh, if disaster comes, I'll bug out. I'll get out of Dodge, as if the grass is always greener somewhere else. when usually it's not.
This is a concept that you will find many new preppers holding on to. The idea of bugging out without really thinking about why, how, or most importantly, where to, which a lot of preppers do. However, while ill conceived, I would argue that building a bug out bag is the prime spot for a prepper to begin their preps. Why? Well, buying a firearm is a very narrow way to begin your personal preparedness journey, whereas a bug out bag requires more thinking. You have to plan a little bit more, you have to strategize a little bit more, and you're going to be exposed to more diverse equipment that you need to become familiar with. In other words, rather than criticize new preppers for their get out of Dodge approach to prepping, it should actually be embraced as a learning opportunity. Preppers need to think about those first 3 days, that 72-hour bag, the typical bug out bag, what it would take for them to survive 3 days on the road, in the wild, etc. And then they can begin to think about what it would take to survive beyond 3 days. The gear involved in building a bug out bag also reflects a more wide skill set that one would have to develop, more wide than shooting alone. You have to think about communications, navigation, shelter, fire building, gray man concept, etc. But listen to what else John says about abandoning your safe haven in a collapse.
If this is some type of true societal collapse, an economic that led to a social collapse where rule of law broke down, now there's really nowhere to run. And if you left all your resources and maybe your family and your friends and your community, and now you're also subject to all the things that can happen security-wise on the open road, that's disastrous.
While John admits to basing his argument on end-of-the-world situations, that overemphasis on the apocalypse is a fundamental flaw that many preppers make. Hell, I'm guilty of that to some degree myself. But practicality should lead your preps first and foremost. Focus less on possibilities and more on probabilities, and that will lead you more toward practical prepping. Situations where you'll actually use the equipment that you need. You're far more likely to need a bug-out bag to avoid a natural disaster than you are another pew-pew to protect the gasoline in the wasteland. And to escape a natural disaster on short notice, it's good to have a bug-out bag ready to go.
The second reason I don't have a bug-out bag is really I recognize the most important preparation that I could possibly have, short of guns and the know-how, tactics, skill of how to use all that, and I'll just put that under the auspices of weapons and security. The second most, and really right up there with it, is community.
Let's pause here for a moment to again address John's focus on firearms as a primary piece of equipment needed for personal preparedness. And it again reflects his warrior-first approach to prepping, which I fundamentally disagree with. And is one of the things that I talk about in my video, 9 mistakes that preppers make. Overemphasis on firearms. That said, from a prepper's perspective, John's argument that community equates to strength is 100% true. And that's another thing that I address in that same video. Preppers' idea that this go-it-alone, lone wolf approach to prepping is somehow the idyllic scenario. It's not. There is strength in community. But is that an argument for ditching a bug-out bag? No, not at all. In fact, the entire community could be facing a bug-out situation. What's more, the best community in an SHTF situation may be a community other than where you live. It could be where you grew up, where your family is, where your friends are. In other words, surviving with your community may require bugging out. John, in this segment, carries on about setting up the defense of your property, and in an SHTF situation, why would you leave that? And that's a solid question to ask, but you have to expect the unexpected. You need a plan B, plan C, plan D. Despite your best intentions, you need to plan for Murphy's Law. You may have to bug out to an even more secure location. You just don't know. And that's going to be the case for many preppers in an SHTF situation. The best location may not be where you are.
The third reason why I don't have a bug-out bag is really a bug-out bag based on the people I have around me. And if you wanted to be able to defend something long-term, really a bag is woefully inadequate for
Now let's pause here for a minute because John's third reason is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a bug out bag is actually intended to be. Bug out bags are often referred to as 72-hour bags. 3 days, that's what they're designed for. Not a forever bag. You don't need to plan to carry your house on your back in a bug out bag. A bug out location is where you would have all of your gear. It's not a forever bag. There's no such thing as a forever bag. John is just simply wrong here.
Now, for all you guys who are just super preppers and you know I'm a moron, you can just sound off in the comments like, John, you're an idiot. I'm like, fair enough. I am on a journey, and like I said before, I haven't figured it all out.
This is what I like about John. He's affable, he's a nice guy. He's just wrong about the need for a bug out bag. No, I haven't done vehicle patrols in Afghanistan, but vehicle patrols in Afghanistan, that's not the sum of all prepping, nor of bugging out. For all of you guys now who are warriors first and think that I'm the idiot, I'm the moron, sound off in the comments. Derek, you're an idiot. It's entirely possible. I too am on a journey. I don't have everything figured out, but this is just my perspective. Please like and share this video if you found it helpful. Prep on, my friends, and that includes you, John Lovell.